Welcome to another episode of the Journeys of Not So Ordinary People podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Dr. Dave Peltz. Along with me, as always, is my esteemed business partner and colleague, Dr. Joe Hamlett. How are you doing today, Dr. Joe?
I'm doing good, Dr. Dave.
Excellent, excellent. And today we have a special guest speaker with us, Ms. Lia Pierce. And I had the privilege of working with Lia for a year doing military transition briefings. We had a great time together. She's one of my favorite people. So how are you doing today, Lia?
I'm doing good. How are you guys doing? It's different to see you without a bow tie.
He's
Yeah,
talked
different.
about the bow tie before,
It's
so
your
you're
trademark.
okay. Yeah, he's mentioned that, but I've never seen it. So
Yeah,
Oh.
I'll wear it special sometime.
I'm
So
doing good. Yeah.
awesome, awesome. So
Thank you for
today's
having me today. Thank
Oh,
you.
absolutely, absolutely. So today's topic is surpassing expectations. So we're just going to jump right into this. And Leah,
well,
oh yeah, go ahead.
they let her go ahead and
Oh,
introduce herself.
oh yeah,
We
yeah,
we know her now. I
yeah,
know her too, but none of the audience knows her.
yeah.
So
Fair enough, fair enough. So tell us a
Um,
little about yourself, Leah.
well, I'm originally from Las Cruces, New Mexico, home of the world's biggest enchilada and real red chili. I came here to Tucson to play soccer for college. Didn't really do much college when I was playing soccer. So my life and my path has changed a lot along the way. I had a couple kids. I stayed here. My family moved out here. I'd like to say I got really lucky with my career. Uh, I've done everything from fundraising to nonprofits um, to academic institutions. I did do some just for feed and Pizza Hut back in the day, but yeah, it's been great. Tucson's home now, and I'm expecting a grandson in the fall.
Congratulations.
well, congratulations. Yep,
So
It's an entirely different life chapter right now. Empty
yep.
nesting with a grandson down the street and deciding what I want to be when I grow up.
there you go, there you go. Well, it sounds like you're going to fit right in with our podcast. So real quick, I'd like to welcome our viewers and listeners back to the Journeys of Not So Ordinary People podcast. Again, this is your personal, professional, and career development podcast. And today's topic is surpassing expectations. And we were talking with Leah offline just before the podcast started. And, surpassing expectations was a very common theme that she brought up. And we think that's a perfect topic for today. So, Leah, what are your thoughts on surpassing expectations? What does that mean to you on a personal or professional level? And how does it apply to what you've gone through or your journey?
I'm a competitive person by nature. So another way to say it would be beating the odds. And I think that's what I've always been about in my career. Even if there was an example out there of something being done that I was, getting into, I always thought, well, it could be done better. we we
Mm.
we can model it after somebody that has the experience or a program out there that exists, but let's do it better. Since I was little, being an athlete and becoming a captain of a team, it's just been my nature. It's the way I was raised. My parents always taught me you don't leave anything. Well, you don't quit anything, first of all, unless you given it your best shot, and you never leave when things are bad. Um, so I think that just ingrained in me that you have to keep going until you could pat yourself on the back and feel good about it. For me, surpassing expectations is it surrounds me being a single mom. A,
Hmm.
a lot of that, not just in the professional arena, but the expectations that people had of me as a single mom juggling it all and having more of a non-traditional work environment,
Hmm.
which wasn't accepted as much pre-pandemic, right?
Right, right.
So I
So,
think the better part of my adult life has been about reaching that glass ceiling and breaking through it.
wow, that's a powerful statement.
Yes.
That's a powerful statement. Um, so you'd mentioned offline that that there was kind of a tipping point in your career. You had achieved a certain level of certain position within your organization, a very high level, and then your perspective kind of changed. What was that like? Working up to that point, reaching it and being there and being like, okay, now what?
It was a weird feeling. It really was. It's hard to walk away from something when you're on fire,
Mm,
right?
Yeah.
But you also have to,
figuratively, not literally, right?
yeah, figuratively, not literally, but you have to give other people a chance to take that and make it better,
Mhm.
and do something with it. And life changes. So yeah, we merged an organization. I had the pleasure, the blessing of running a grassroots nonprofit for single moms going to college. And we were in a good place, but we knew that the community needed the help more so than maybe the organization needed an infrastructure, as it was a grassroots organization. Um, so we integrated this organization, and I wasn't sure how long I would end up being there. So it was very goal driven. Where do we need to get this program, by when? And we did it. We did it within a couple years, and I had to really evaluate. I have a good reputation. I'm going to, different events in the community. I'm making connections. I'm on fire. Now's not the time to leave. But things change in your life. And so I was already at a good place, and family dynamics shifted. But my mom got ill. So I thought, if I take a break now or maneuver now, there is no failing for me. I've built such a network and community around me. I can't mess up. If I stay beyond, I mean, more than I could have ever even imagined I'd accomplish, what happens? You get to the top of a mountain, what's inevitably going to
Right, right,
happen?
right. What's after the
Yeah.
top? Do you
Well,
just keep jumping?
no, I like to, leave on a jumper going in. So, but it was a weird feeling, and there is a grieving process.
Mm,
And then you have to start all over again,
Yep.
right?
wow.
And where do you start all over again? And do you still have it in you to do that all over again? But it's so fun.
Yeah, go ahead, Joe. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, I commend you for, leaving at that level. You're already at the highest level, and there's probably could have still continued to excel and move forward. But so I commend you for, choosing to walk away, because that's where a lot of people fail, is because they stay too long. They wear out their welcome, because they get to that level and then they feel like they've arrived. So they stop growing, they stop maturing. So I commend you for, again, recognizing, and you're right. It comes down to sometimes those life, changes that happen that you need to adjust to, and then being in a position where you can capitalize on that and move on. So,
Mhm.
good for you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
A lot of self reflection along the
A-
way.
there you go. There
Absolutely,
you
yeah.
go.
You
And
just said.
it's like
I was just
leaving the
go-
casino when you're ahead before you start losing.
right,
It's like I've done
exactly.
so good. I'm destined to screw up. I better go
Yeah,
now.
yeah. Well, we're just kind of chuckling because we say that critical self-reflection on every episode, because that is so important. You
Mhm.
can't move forward, or even, take a step back until you really think about what you're going to do.
Yeah,
So
and where you're
you plugged
currently
it
at.
for us. Yeah. So thanks for that.
Yeah. I was just thinking back when you said you were able to transition at the peak of your career. And I remember when I went from one job to another, I felt like I had gone as far as I could in that organization, because it was more of an engineering company and I've got a business background. And I felt like, it's going to be a decade before I get another opportunity. You either you have to wait till someone basically died or retired before you got an opportunity to move up. And so I took an opportunity outside the organization and it worked great. But that was one of the first times that I was involuntarily displaced, and it was an interesting position to be in, because it, like you said, you're there, you find yourself in that position, being voluntarily displaced or involuntarily displaced, like in my circumstance, and you start thinking, what do I want to do now? Where do I want to go? Because you've given it your all, you've exceeded your expectations. I worked for a company, and when they brought me in, they said, how long is this going to take? And I said 18 to 24 months, depending on the level of support. And they supported me so well, I was able to get it done in 12 months.
Awesome.
my detriment. Sometimes overachieving, there's a cost with it. But I had reached that level, and when I was displaced, I was okay with it because I realized I'd done everything I could do at that point for that organization at that level. And so, it started making me reflect on what else do I really want to focus on. And I was already teaching college at the time, but I was able to really start focusing on teaching college. So I was taking classes whenever I could get them to teach. I was, working on a book. It was just on my first book, and it's just amazing the type of opportunities that present themselves once you feel like you've gotten where you need to be for that point in your life. So I'll pause.
Absolutely. And I think I took a little too much credit myself. I've always had people around me that expect great things too. And that's really helpful to have people around you that trust you, and that can support you, like you just mentioned. And you said something that kind of triggered a memory of mine. The first organization that I worked for, I was young. I mean, they taught me how to be a professional. Really, I think I was dressing in soccer shorts and baggy shirts, and walked out of there 12 years later in heels and a briefcase. I mean, I'm exaggerating a little, a little, Dave. But my supervisor and my mentor at the time, it was a faith-based, so to speak, organization, and it wasn't my faith. So I could only get so far. It's not written in stone that you have to be that faith to run the organization, but assuming that that's what they would want.
Right.
My mentor was leaving. She was going to retire after 20 years, and 2 years from that point, she started asking me the question, what's next for you? I'm going to be leaving. You're going to hit a glass ceiling. You're going to be running a nonprofit one day. So you need to get a hold of these 3 CEOs. You need to start networking now. And I didn't believe that in myself at all. So it's really helpful if you want to set that bar and keep, surpassing it to have those kind of people around you.
Now, we did an episode probably a year ago now, but it was called Personal Board of Advisors, and that is very critical. And I've had a couple in my career that's helped me get to the next level. But you're right, if you've got people, because a lot of times we can't see what we're capable of. It normally takes somebody else from the outside and seeing your greatness or seeing your potential. And so it is definitely helpful to have those people cheering for you, supporting you. And in your case, someone that already had retired, but still reaching back and still helping you rise. So that's always a good experience. So building that network, building those mentors, mentees, even,
Absolutely.
passing that on to other people. So that is very critical in your own personal growth and development. So that was good to see that you had that.
Yeah,
I,
thank you.
I
And
like that
actually,
you mentioned that you
I
had
was
mentors as well. And that's something else that Joe and I have talked
just going to
about,
say that.
Yep.
the personal board of advisors and mentors. I mean, we've met so many people throughout our careers and our journeys that don't have mentors. They don't have coaches.
Right.
They don't have a personal board of directors or that support system. And you can see it in them. It's a different it's a different perspective that they have. And I remember early in my career, I didn't have a mentor or a coach, and it felt like you're paddling upstream
Yeah.
without a paddle. You're just kind of sitting there, dipping in the waves, but you're not going anywhere. You feel like you're getting momentum, but you're not. And that coach or that mentor can be a huge, huge point and
Absolutely.
opportunity for you to be able to start stepping in a positive direction, whatever that direction is.
Oh, absolutely. And just going back to a statement earlier, my supervisor at the time and my mentor was running the organization. She was actually still there at the time. She was trying to plan for her retirement and then what's going to happen to Lia, like and sometimes you have a mentor and you don't realize it
Right.
until
Yeah.
maybe, you've gone in 2 different directions. But she gave me, some nuggets of advice. And one of them was, always surround yourself with people that are smarter than you. And it was probably the best thing I could have done in my career at all. No head nodders, people that'll challenge you, that'll hold you to high expectations. that you can't bullshit, and that can keep you from making mistakes, really, big mistakes. Maybe individuals that have different experiences in different areas. I don't know what I would do now. And I often tell people, that may be struggling or looking for a position or not knowing what to do. If I could give you 2 pieces of advice, if I could talk to you for an hour and you only walked away with 2 things, I would say find a mentor and build your network. And then you can surpass your expectations because you have people to help you along the way and hold you accountable.
Yeah, that's a big one. That self-accountability, that accountability of others and yourself, the expectations. We touch on that quite frequently because that it's an important part. I mean, you have to hold, first of all, you have to hold yourself accountable, but you have to be willing to hold others accountable, because if not, then it leads to dysfunction and status quo a lot of times. You really need to understand what the expectations are and be accountable to those expectations. And if those expectations change, you need to reevaluate, is that still within within the realm of what I want to do personally and professionally? How is that going to impact me when that target or those goals keep changing or moving going forward? How is that going to impact me? Is that really where I want to be at that time? Is it moving in a direction away from what you want to do? We all have these core abilities that we really enjoy using and skills, but Joe and I've mentioned this before, but sometimes organizations will look at what you can do and then they get kind of like that scope creep on what your job function is, and it's like, well, I was brought on to do this and now you want me to do that too. So just setting those boundaries, if you will, because I know for a lot of my career I would let that scope creep happen because I wanted more exposure, I wanted more integration into the organizations, and to really build my knowledge base and network. But sometimes it can come at a detriment as well.
Yeah, it can. And I think one thing that could be a struggle sometimes as that job description, it expands, is you can't do all things great. It's like a pie, right? So if you're trying to do, and organizations don't always get that. They see that, that spectrum of skill, and they want to put you everywhere, but some area is going to suffer for it. I don't know that I'm the best at setting boundaries, but I think, my next chapter, I'm going to do some pushback in that area so that I can continue to exceed expectations and not be diluted in 7, 8 different areas. It's the environment's changing. Technology is advancing at a rapid speed, and I think employers are demanding more and more, and employees, as many as they are out there seeking jobs. A lot of people just they want peace and happiness in a work environment. And in order to do that, you really have to know the culture and what you're getting yourself into. It's a lot of work. I got lucky. I got really, really, really lucky. And when I teach these classes, job skills for transitioning service members, that's what we did together. And I tell everybody, sometimes it's a little bit of luck and grace on your side. I consider myself lucky. Yeah.
What are some of the key things that are key to you in surpassing expectations? What are some of the things that you focus on to enable yourself to stay focused, to keep the direction, to keep your path, your journey aligned to surpass expectations, your expectations, your families, your peers, your network? What are some of the key things that you do to do that?
I think the one that I mentioned before is having a good group of people, around me, of course, some mentors, being flexible. I think that's really helped me out, is not being open to change as change occurs. Reevaluating, along the way. I think I'm losing my train of thought for a minute. We're gonna have to come back to that one. I have a I have a hummingbird nest outside. I know this is off topic. I have a hummingbird nest that I'm staring at. And the other day, the hummingbird flew in the house, and it took about 2 hours to get it back to its baby. So I'm just like, I'm happy that's reunited. So I got a little distracted there, Dave. I'm sorry. If I were asked what a weakness was, I would say I get distracted easily.
That's not a bad thing. Pretty shiny things come up. You're like, oh, wait, that's cool.
That's a cute little hummingbird.
Again, you touched on, like they said, the things that we talk about all the time, the constant reevaluations, self-reflection. Those are very important as you move forward. You have to continue to do that, and again, the flexibility is very important because things change, and you have to be willing to accept those changes and put it where you need it, and then move forward. But I also want to go back. I know we kind of move forward, but the mentoring thing, I mentioned that I had a couple of good mentors, but it really wasn't until I kind of decided I wanted to move forward that my mentors kind of arose. That then I think they saw the potential in me, then they, offered that hand. But, like Dave said, I was swimming uphill for a long time, and without any assistance, not really getting anywhere. And it wasn't until I started to show these, sparks of greatness or whatever, or potential, then people started to recognize those things, and then they started to bring me into their fold and helping me to move forward. So it's not just that you just get selected randomly. It's more they can see it, they can see you, they can see your energy, and then they gravitate to that. So I just wanted to point that out, that I didn't always have mentors. It came later in life, and again, I had to do something to get to that point where I was going to be recognized.
Absolutely. And I think I had to look back on a relationship and realize it was a mentorship, to realize how important mentors are in my life.
So
otherwise, I don't know how I would have come to that conclusion. And at what point in my life is you tell young people nowadays, hey, go find a mentor. And they're like, what? How do I just cold call somebody?
Under rocks, they look behind trees, they look online.
But if you build it, they will come. If you put yourself out there, they'll surface.
Yeah. So you had mentioned some of the things that you want to do now. What are some of those things that, so far as surpassing your own expectations of yourself? What are some of those things that you're thinking about now? And when we met a couple of years ago, you had mentioned it, and now it sounds like you're on that track. So would you mind sharing that with us?
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned my own expectations. I think as you go along, it's important to realize surpassing your expectations, that may be different than what other people expect. And that's okay. I was a single mom. One of my expectations was get through it while raising your kids and surviving. That may not have been what other people, would see from the from the outside. What was the question again?
Don't worry, we fall off that train. I fall off that train of thought more so than Joe does.
It's like I have to have a piece of paper right here because I'm getting excited about everything I need to say.
So what are some of the areas that you want to surpass your own expectations now?
Well, life changed for me, and it changed at the right time. So I want a different arena. So I think I mentioned to you a couple of years ago, I've always wanted to teach. I love being in front of a crowd. I love helping people. So I'm going to go back to school. Wow. I don't know. I mean, surpassing my expectations. I told my dad the other day, I'm going to be teaching at U of A. I'm going to have a waiting list to get in my class, and it's going to be somewhere along the lines of ethics and AI. And you see, wow. I just, that I don't know if I'll get there, but I think for me and the expectations around me and myself, it's like go big or go home. But in order to set myself up for that, I have to start telling people. So now I'm terrified, actually, if we put this out there and I'm not signed up for graduate school and have a PhD in 10 years, somebody's going to come back along and say, I was just BSing them. It's terrifying, but I think being open with that again, it's accountability.
Yep. Yep. That's, and I've told Dave this before. When I was working on my doctorate, that's exactly what I did. I told everybody and anybody so that they would hold me accountable. So
Yeah.
I absolutely, I did that because when I would see them again, they'd say, "Hey, where are you at? How far are you? Have you got your doctorates yet?" And so it did force me to stay focused and achieving that, because it would, if I would have never said anything and people wouldn't have known, I may have said, you know what, because I did get a point where I was ready to stop. And if it wasn't for my wife, then I would have stopped. But that's what I did. I sang it to the highest, rafters, that I'm working on my doctorate, just so that I could have that additional, accountability. Other people saying, you're doing this not just for you, but you're doing it for us too. And I think that helped along the way for me, because every time I saw people, they were constantly asking. And so not only did I feel like I would let myself down, my family down, but there were so many other people that were counting on me to do this. So you put the pressure on yourself
Yeah,
when you do that.
You do.
But like you said, you set that expectation, and it made it easier for me, because I know I had some struggles, and I would think about the people that I could genuinely see supported me, how it would have affected them. So that helped me. It did. So that's a good approach. Hopefully it'll work out for you too.
I think I'd be more fearful of looking somebody in the eye if it's 5 years from now and I never even finished school than the fear of getting through school. But you mentioned your wife, and I have a really good supportive system. It's funny. In talking about expectations, I'm thinking of that voice in the back of my head, and my mom's always pushed me to do better. And we were going over, I've been blessed, and I've been recognized for that in the community. So, I'm trying to brag to my mom about everything I've accomplished. And she said, "But have you gone to the cemetery and cleaned the cemetery yet?" She's always wanted me to go clean the cemetery, because she loves the souls. But you're never done. That was her point. You're never done. It's not enough. You keep going, and that was sometimes frustrating growing up. I just wanted to be a C student. So when I got an A, I would be recognized for it. But I wouldn't be the woman I am today, or I wouldn't have the resiliency. And, I think resiliency is overused sometimes too. But I just wouldn't be where I was if I didn't have that to push me along.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. And I'm going to echo what Joe said. My doctoral program, it really is a very challenging program, but it's also very rewarding when it gets to the end. You realize it's not the end, it's a new beginning. And to your point, exceeding expectations, what do we do now? How do we take this degree or this skill or this education or this relationship or this network to the next level? How do we keep pushing the boundary? How do we keep pushing the expectations and surpassing those expectations? So we've got a couple minutes left. I'm going to ask Joe if he has any final thoughts, and then I'll move on to you. Joe, any final thoughts on the conversation?
No, it's been a pleasure speaking with Lia and learning a little bit about her expectations, or surpassing them, and again, they line a lot with what we've accomplished and what we've done and what the way we view it. That like I like the last statement you made about it's never over or it's never done, and that's why me and Dave keep looking at ourselves like, what's next? What are we going to do when we grow up? Because we view it that way, and we just keep our mind open to the possibility. So it's great to continue to have conversations with people with that same type of mentality and same approach. So again, it's been a pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you so much. Absolutely. And I think failure is part of it. I've made a lot of mistakes,
Yep.
and I've failed. And a great friend and somebody I mentored, she wanted to be a nurse. She failed out of nursing school twice, ended up being in charge of about 80 different nurses as a manager, got her dream job, and then got her dream job again.
Wow.
And at the time that she didn't get through nursing school, it was a huge devastation. Life was not going to go on, and she would never have gone down this path had it not been for that. And sometimes that stops us in our tracks.
Yeah, and Dave has heard this, and the audience has heard this a bunch of times too. So it took me 5 times to go back to school. I started
did it.
stopped 4 times previous to that. And yeah, so kind of to your point, I was able to come out on top because I never quit completely. I failed in those previous attempts, but I just kept pushing that last attempt. So yeah.
And we get wiser and better as the time goes on anyway. So.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Hopefully. Well, this has been a great episode. Thank you, Lia, for joining us. It was great to see you again and have a conversation with you. I missed some of our conversations from before we were working together. And again, we'd like to thank our viewers and listeners for joining us with another episode of the Journeys of Not So Ordinary People podcast, your personal, professional, and career development podcast. If you liked what you heard or saw, give us a like, share. That's really what this is about, is just bringing people together to share their experiences where you might not have an opportunity to in your normal daily lives, because most all of us are pretty busy. So thank you again for joining us. Visit our website down below. If you have any questions or would like to reach out to Lia, her contact information is up there as well. And we want to thank you again for supporting us with the show by viewing us. With that, we'd like to ask you to keep on being your not so ordinary you.